How did I get here?
Let's start at high school graduation. I think my 17-year-old self would have freaked out if someone would have told him that in less than a year, he'd be dropping out of college. I grew up in a community where I felt a lot of pressure to go down the path. You know,
Work hard in school, get into a good college, then get a safe, cushy, high-paying corporate job, get married, buy a house in suburbia, get a car, a big watch, then retire.
yada, 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 yada. You know how it goes. Except deep down, I knew that's not what I wanted. In fact, I had no idea what I wanted, but I didn't really know what else to do, and I just decided to go down the safe path and go to college. When I got to Ohio State University, it's no surprise looking back that I started to develop severe anxiety. And if the anxiety and soon-to-be depression wasn't enough, I started to break out in painful hives and rashes all over my body. It literally felt like my skin was on fire. It sucked, like really sucked. I remember feeling trapped, and I hated myself and the life I was living. I was in this vicious cycle. Cue the existential crisis. I started asking the questions that weren't being taught in my classes and textbooks. You know, why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? I'd been dreaming of traveling since I was a little kid, and I was so curious to explore another culture. It sounded about 1,000 times better than being stuck in a place spending all this time, money, and energy when in reality I had no desire to be there. After one semester of living in an anxiety and skin problem-ridden hell, I finally decided to do something. I took a leap of faith and left school. Well, technically I took a leave of absence, but I knew deep down that I wasn't going back to school. I just didn't need to tell my parents that for now. 2 months later, my naive 18-year-old ass hopped on a one-way flight to Guatemala with a backpack, a shoestring budget, no cell phone, and about 3 words of Spanish. I didn't bring a phone because I felt like I needed to get away from social media. It was starting to really affect me and my mental health. I had found this volunteer project in Guatemala that called out to me. Little did I know that this would be the start of an adventure that would change the course of my life.
I spent 4 months backpacking and volunteering throughout Central America. I taught English and soccer in a remote village, lived with an amazing local family, trekked in the jungle, explored ancient ruins, and summited the largest pyramid in the world. I camped on the beach, helped build an eco-lodge in Nicaragua, boarded down a volcano, lived on a spiritual community where I learned about meditation and breathwork.
Oh yeah, and people went naked on this island. More on that another time.
I lived on a raw vegan permaculture farm in Costa Rica with a total nutjob German dude, hiked to mesmerizing waterfalls, and most of all, I discovered new parts of who I am.
My skin healed, my anxiety was starting to go away, and I realized that I'd been so scared to leave this common path, but when I just followed my intuition and what I truly believed was right, everything worked out. I got home like a man on a freaking mission. I spent the next 2 years writing a book on my story. I slept on my mom's couch, working on my book during the day and working in a restaurant at night to help fund my book. I also started speaking at high schools and colleges about my story and talking about mental health. When I was in my darkest time, I remember feeling so alone. It felt like everyone on social media was just portraying all the good stuff, and I felt like a complete fraud because I was going through all these emotions and issues that no one seemed to be talking about. You know, anxiety and depression and all the other stuff that we typically hide. So I figured I would talk about it openly because I wanted people to know that they weren't alone and life does get better. Then I gave a TED Talk on how to replace anxiety with purpose. That was pretty cool.
I published my book, which was a dream come true. I hustled the next few months, doing over 60 podcasts and radio interviews, selling my book at farmers markets and street fairs, and speaking at schools.
One night, a little bit after publishing my book, I burst into tears. While I was super driven about my mission and everything I was doing, I was so lonely. I was 20 now, still sleeping on my mom's couch and barely making any money. I craved friendship and connection. I had been alone so much the past 2 years that I was seeking to be a part of a community. Scrolling on Instagram one day, I came across this trip to Mexico being promoted by this guy named BC Cerna. Something about it just called out to me. And after waiting back and forth, I finally decided to purchase the trip. It cost $1,000, which was about a third of my bank account. The next day, I checked my email and found out that I'd won this book marketing contest that I had submitted 2 months earlier. And the cash prize, $1,000. I was supposed to be on this trip. In Mexico, I met the founder of that travel company, a guy named Taylor Conroy. And there was something about him that I was really drawn towards. I picked his brain about anything and everything, learning all about his philanthropic efforts that helped raise millions of dollars to build schools and other projects in developing countries around the world. I also asked him about speaking, giving 4 TED Talks, and even going bankrupt. He had this aura of authenticity, adventure, and this I can do anything mentality. I remember thinking to myself, wow, I would love to learn from this guy. Well, fast forward 7 months. I'm doing this activity where I'm writing down 3 of my role models, and one of them is Taylor Conroy. A week later, I'm on Facebook and I see a post from Taylor that says, looking for a high vibe, dope AF intern assistant. I immediately knew that the role was for me, and I crafted this big message and sent it to him. I think you know the rest. 2 months later, I moved to Venice Beach, and for the next 3 months, I lived on an air mattress in a DJ's apartment. I was making really little money and things were uncertain, and unfortunately the travel company ended up going under because it was a really hard business model. After lots of brainstorming, Taylor and I decided to build an online course teaching people how to give a TEDx talk. Since he'd given 4 TED Talks that led to raising millions of dollars and speaking all over the world, and I'd actually given 2 and landed 3, I knew the system pretty well. We started building what would be my first real business. We moved back to San Diego, which is where I grew up, and honestly, I was really happy because I had lots of friends here, and really, I just don't like LA. It kind of makes me anxious. The next year was great and fast. We lived in Costa Rica for 6 weeks, surfing every day, eating mangoes.
Yeah!
This is a money one.
Look at
That's a pretty big mango, dude. That's like the size of your head.
Head mango?
Head mango.
And embracing the online business lifestyle that allowed us the freedom to work from wherever. The company started to grow, and from 2 of us, it became 8 over the next 6 months. The business was gaining traction, and we started to attract some cool opportunities. We went on this international speaking tour across 4 countries in Europe, which was awesome. I felt like a rock star. Staying in nice hotels, flying from country to country, eating like a champion, and speaking to thousands of people. Returning from that trip in the summer and spring of 2019, things started to grow, like really grow. The company now had over 25 people. We were moving fast and I was starting to really feel the pressure of responsibility. I was stressed. The thing is, I did love my life. I started making the most money I ever had. I loved everyone who I was working with. I had great friends and I was surfing almost every day. Life was good. And then everything changed. October 17th, 2019. I came home from work one day and I thought I was just getting a bug or the flu. Except after a few days, my symptoms weren't going away. I had extreme fatigue, exhaustion, pounding headaches, and all these weird symptoms. And I'm talking a level of fatigue that was scary. Like, I used to get out of bed at 5:30 a.m. every morning and I could barely get out of bed until 8 a.m. every day. I knew that something was wrong. After a few weeks, I was scared. Really scared.
And most people would have no fucking clue. You look at me and they think, oh, you look healthy. No idea the pain that I go through every day.
It felt like the spark inside of me just died. The next 5 months were the worst of my life. I went from doctor to doctor, taking lab test after lab test, and still, the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. I eventually had to stop working and part ways with Taylor and the business that I had started and poured my entire heart and soul into. I couldn't exercise, barely having enough energy to do anything, and experienced a level of hopelessness and despair that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. Finally, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease and a host of other health challenges. Part of me was relieved to finally get a diagnosis, but the other part of me was overwhelmed because chronic Lyme disease, as they call it, is complicated, and it can take a while to heal. So adjusting to my new reality and accepting what is has been really challenging. The past few months, I haven't been doing anything because I really thought that my body needed a rest. And you know what? Maybe it did. I had been so tired and honestly just felt shitty almost all of the time. However, I'm a creator. It's hardwired into me. It's in my blood. I needed something to work on, something to build, something to create, something to just sink my teeth into. Having a purpose makes me happy. And while I only have a few hours a day to create where I actually feel enough energy to do something, I'm gonna use that time and make the most of it. And that's why I'm starting this channel. I don't know how long it's gonna be until I'm healed. There's really a lot of uncertainty in my life. But what I do know is that I love to create and share my journey, so that's what I'm gonna do. Welcome to the ride and thank you for watching. And just make sure you hit that subscribe button below to follow along for the journey. Peace.